This is the briefing video for the Dalton Township Board of Trustee meeting happening on the 10th of June, 2024 at 6 p.m. Decently normal opening to the meeting. We are planning on having the fire chief here. He's at a major training event, but his report's included in here, so everyone should need. And one trustee, Bennett, is away on a trip. Other than that, beginning should be basically the same. We get down to that first public comment, although we'll see if we have any new candidates announcing or anything like that or updates. We're in that election year, election season. We get on to our decision items. We have the senior millage money allocation, and the fiscal year for the township and the county doesn't align. So this thing doesn't work out great. Municipalities all over the place have struggled at times with allocating the senior millage money. It's been a bit of a controversial thing. May or may not get renewed or go away here in the near future. But as is what we've done recently, right, the past couple of years, is allocate towards snow plowing over the winter, and then the rest towards safe seniors to pursue senior scammers and that type of thing as a dedicated amount. So that's what I have it written up as here, because the snow plowing didn't end up to too much over the winter, actually. I think just over 10 grand, then there's $20,000 left for that. You know, there could be other proposals, but that's the basic idea as it is now. Next, we have the annual sewer rate increase. And this is from that project in 06 going up Whitehall Road, the lawsuits that came out of that. We had to increase the rates quite a bit, sold off land, put $500,000 from the land sale proceeds into it to try to keep the rate increases down. And then it was from all that, it was projected that if we increase 4% per year, then we should be good, maintain the funds in case there was any type of issue with maintenance that needed to be done. So this is written up as 4% again in here. In the entire resolution, it's 146 pages, so I've included a lot of stuff. The entire resolution is in here, so wants to read that. Next, which helps explain the situation and has the specific numbers as well. Next, we have the cemetery ordinance update. We discussed this in the last meeting, and so this is what Heather's proposing as the cemetery ordinance as of now. Next, we have the old Civic Center land sale proceeds. So normally this wouldn't come up. Once we got past all of the sewer land sale proceeds, that funding, then it just becomes land sale proceeds go to the general fund. This one had an old deed restriction when it went from the civic association to the religious organization, that if the religious organization sold it, those land sale proceeds had to go to the Muskegon Community Foundation to set up scholarships for Whitehall, Holton, and Reese Puffer schools. Now, with it being foreclosed on by the state, that no longer applies. We wouldn't have to go by that stipulation, but because it's there, because I have the paperwork on it, I know about it, and I brought it to the board's attention before, I wanted to bring it up again. Now, the argument against that is also very strong, because in foreclosing on the property, well, the county foreclosed on the property on purchasing the foreclosure, and then doing the demolition of the building that had collapsed, the township ended up spending more money than what we sold the land for. So we're already at a loss on that, if you figure that out, so we could make the case that there are no proceeds from the sale. So, but I just wanted to bring that for a final discussion with the board to see which way we want to go. Next, we have Twin Lake Fireworks, and I assume everyone is aware of the normal Twin Lake Fireworks show that occurs every year. They turned in their permit and their license and their proof of insurance, and so everything should be good to go with that. Next, we have the home occupation ordinance, and this is home businesses as well. It's gone through the process for the Planning Commission to clarify some things and lighten some things up a little bit. Next, we have the land bid opening on East Lakewood Road. We'd set the minimum in the last one for $35,000, and so we're going to open bids in this one. Next, we have the land sale proposal on East Forest Park. This is a small piece, and so we're looking at setting a minimum, and we have the numbers on true cash value from the assessor and the numbers from realtor comparables. Next, we have the land sale proposal on Lakewood and Russell. This is that big project, 178, 179 acres, and I have information on the proposal from the developer in here, Leatherman, looking at doing residential properties, makes the case of why it should be sold for a lesser price, right, for a deal because it's going to benefit the township in making houses, and there's going to be a bunch of permit fees and increased taxes over time. So he's essentially making that case. We have realtor comparables, which when you figure out the numbers would end up being, a large amount of money. And then we don't have true cash value from the assessor yet, and just communicated with her this morning. She got the request very late, and so it's a lot to go through because there's a bunch of parcels. It's pretty complex. And she also thinks that the realtor comparables aren't very legitimate because it's not comparable to those properties that were mostly in the village and that type of thing. So she didn't think those comparables were very good. And there's another issue in that the township has owned this property for so long, and since the township doesn't pay property taxes, it's difficult to get the previous numbers on them, or what they would be has to be figured out anew. You can't, just look back at what it was a short while ago, essentially. So that is that, all right? Big deal there. Next, we have the foreclosure purchases. And so this is land that the county's foreclosed on. The township has the option of purchasing these properties. And I'm not huge into the township purchasing a bunch of properties. And when I came into office, we had a rental house and everything that we sold because that's unusual and weird, and I don't think should exist. But some of these small pieces of land in Dalton Township, especially when you get up around the village, is odd. Right? It was really chopped up into small pieces. At one time, if you bought a subscription to a newspaper in Chicago, you would get a tiny piece of land in Dalton Township. And so there's all these various owners. This thing has been dealt with as an issue in land here for many decades, and all these chopped up little tiny pieces. And so there's some of those that the property is surrounded by township property, and it's a small little piece, and the back property taxes on it are a few $100. Probably makes sense for the township to acquire it. Other pieces that are larger and next to private owners and stuff, one of them or someone else should probably buy it. So hopefully people look through those. Hopefully the board members look through those and have a proposal on maybe which ones we should purchase, which ones we shouldn't. So, and there's maps and all those in here, a decent amount of information. Next, we have the land sale application form, and just a couple of minor updates on it. Really, Tracy wanted to update it. She's been doing land sale stuff, and I felt like just approving it, but because the board had previously voted on it, it makes sense to bring to the board again. Next, we have the automobile paving petition, and I'm quite surprised that we've been able to do 2 paving projects from special assessments, starting with petitions on Mr. Linda and Central in the last 2 years. I didn't think a single one of those would ever reach the stage where it went to the board at all. So it's kind of amazing. They are a huge hassle, and so it's not fun, not a fun process, I think, for anyone to go through. Well, I also feel that as the township, we shouldn't be the ones standing in the way if a large amount of people want to pay extra money to pave the road. Now, this one just came in under the wire on the original petitions, which we have in here, and we have the map and stuff, that Tracy's gone through, and you can see her markings in red, and a lot of the first signatures were illegitimate, so she disqualified those. But eventually, they went out and got more of the right signatures. Eventually, they ended up with 77% on this one. And so it's a decent amount lower than the numbers that we saw on Michelinda or Central as far as the percentage goes. It's a decent amount higher than the 51% that you need. And so debatable, will be a controversial project. If we do the project and if it starts going through the process, obviously take a while and depends on a lot of factors. So I wrote a little bit about how the process goes in the future. Feel free to look at that, especially if you're on that section of automobile just south of the village is the portion that it's on. Next, we have discussion items. We have 3 of them. One is a resident thank you. And this was proposed by a different resident. And in the letter in here, I didn't write, the other resident wrote, right? Proposing that we do a resident thank you or a certificate of appreciation or an award for community involvement, that type of thing. And with a proposal that be done every year as well. And so I kind of wanted to sound out the board and see what people thought of that, how people people felt about the specific letter that's in here and the specific person, obviously choosing someone at that point that is written up in here that's been proposed, but also the general idea. So we'll see where that goes. Next, we have board field trips. This was proposed by Cedar Creek, the supervisor over at Cedar Creek, Linda. I talked to her, and they want to work on the section of road of Dawson Road north of M120. It's a border road, so obviously you get both townships involved. And their board wants to do a field trip out there together to look at the road. And they are essentially inviting the Dalton Township board to participate in that. And so I want to see if the board wants to do a field trip. Obviously, there's issues in that it has to be, because there's a quorum discussing township things. So that falls under the Open Meetings Act, but it is possible other municipalities do field trips like that, essentially. And then Tracy had mentioned that, it'd be nice to do that to some area businesses and things too. So not something that I've pushed or inquired into in a major way previously with the board, so I didn't know how the board would feel about it. We'll find out in this meeting. On the road, my view is that you can just go drive down at any time. It's a road, right? So it seems weird to go through the hassle of all meeting over there together and trying to coordinate schedules and Open Meetings Act notifications and things. Businesses are a little bit different because you can't just go in them necessarily. Now, some you obviously can. You can just walk in, but manufacturers, you wouldn't just walk in. But if someone was really enthusiastic, they could probably set up a little visit on their own. So, it's an option. And obviously, if we had something specific going on, it makes sense for the planning commission to look at the grounds, that type of thing. So I think, both highly debatable. Next, we have the West Lake treatment. And so we've had, there's just a massive amount of complaints on lakes in general, right? Because there's a large amount of disagreement. I think there's a higher aesthetic sense among people that live on lakes, and you have good visibility to neighbors and stuff. So I think that's all part of it. But as far as the water goes, there are major issues there as well. Obviously, there's been with the levels, the channels were a mess and a disaster. The lake level outlet device in Twin Lake, luckily we got that fixed out of funds the drain commissioner already had, right? So there's a lot there. There's the old septic system, so when the water was high, that was definitely an issue. There was the old sewer thing that failed in going up there, and it doesn't look like would happen in the near future in any way. It'd be a massive thing to tackle. There's this concern with treatment, and that's a debate everywhere that lakes get treated, right? Should we treat with chemicals, and shouldn't we? And then how much and what exactly? The state illegalized using chemicals to treat for swimmer's itch. So not everyone's even aware of that. So that ends up being this debatable thing. And some people just use the lake for swimming, right? Or boating, whatever it may be. And so essentially overtreating the lake isn't too big of a concern for them because they essentially use it like a pool. And then other people want to fish. And so they need fish beds and they need plants in the lake so that you can have fish survive. And so there's all of these controversies, different views that oppose each other. We've had the most complaints, I believe, about overtreatment on West Lake because there's a decent amount of interest in fishing there and people get their money and stock the lake with fish. And then they've had a tendency to have decently large die-offs. And I tried probably a year ago, somewhere in there, getting a different bid from Solitude. Because right now we use PLM. But this year the contract is up for West Lake first. And then each of the next years we have one lake come up under that contract. So I tried to solicit a bid from Solitude, took quite a while, but now I do have one. I went out, the numbers in here came out small. I asked for the report twice so that numbers would be easier to see, but the second time they came through small as well as in a PDF, so I couldn't really adapt it very well. It wasn't like an Excel or anything. So they're in there. But they could fluctuate those. They said they just came out close to the numbers that PLM has to make things comparable. And I went out and inspected, they brought out a fan boat, just in case there were a lot of weeds in the lake, but there weren't in West Lake, of course, and to inspect and go around. And I went around with them in West Lake. And their view is that the lake is being overtreated. So I assume that will be controversial because I've talked to people on the lake that think it probably should be treated more to get rid of more weeds, right? So it's a decent amount of opposing views on that one. But this is in here for discussion because over the next few months we could sign a contract for next year for Solitude, which would bring a different perspective to treatments to the lake than PLM. And then after a year of review, it could be visited on who we think is doing better on which lakes, that type of thing. So obviously I'll be out of office by the time that's happening, but we can set up for it now. So highly debatable thing. I'm guessing there'll be a few different views. Hopefully some people from Westlake show up and offer their views on that as well. Of I think BLM is doing a great job now. If anything, we should treat more. I would, someone else, I would like a switch because I want more fish in the lake, whatever it may be. Feel free to reach out and offer your views. So that is it. A decent size package, obviously, 146 pages and a decent agenda. Now, several things in here are pretty big for being discussed. And hopefully people are able to do that. That's why I get the packets out on Wednesday for a Monday meeting. So people have time to look through them, debate things, talk with friends, neighbors, family, enemies, frenemies, whoever you want to talk with about it, and hopefully come to the meeting, offer your opinion on these things, because we have that first public comment on anything in the agenda, and we have a second public comment at the end where you can comment on anything, and I know at least one person has contacted me, and they're going to comment on something at the end of the meeting that's not on the agenda, essentially, as to start the discussion with the board about changing an ordinance. And so feel free to reach out, any questions, thoughts, ideas, comments, concerns on any of this. I always have some more information in some way because I can't include every conversation I have with everyone in a packet. Even at 146 pages, the packets would be massive, right? They'd be like 1,000-page packets or something, and we're not going to do that. So I always have some more information in some way on these issues that I can relate to people, and some people do reach out. My direct line at the office there is 231-332-6700, or email supervisor@daltontownship.org. Otherwise, this is Jeff Martin signing off until next time.